to unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the TLF, radio zone.
Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be around the globe, in the chat room, on another planet, or on the other side. This is The Last Frequency. I'm Mike Vara, and this broadcast is coming at you live from the capital city, Columbia, South Carolina, located on the east coast of the United States. And the website, lastfrequency.com or MikeVera.com. Either one will get you there, or VARARadionetwork.com. All three of those will drive you to the same location. So I've got a interesting guest joining me tonight. I'll tell you all about her in just a little bit. I also got some news and some other stuff going on here that I'll get into. Courtney McInvale. I think it's McInvale. I'm probably screwing it up, but we'll see. But Courtney's going to join us, and we are going to talk about Civil War ghosts, haunted type areas. It's going to be one of those nights, the paranormal, I guess I should say. And so it should be interesting when I bring Courtney on just a little bit. And I'm trying to get, there it is. All right. So then I got some few news articles I'll share with you. And, of course, we take the break and such. Boy, it was a cold one tonight. I came out of work and, man, it was nippy. You know, I like cold, but when it gets freezing, I'm not too fond of freezing. So it's a cold one. I'm supposed to get, I think the high tomorrow is going to be 39 degrees. And then the next day, it's going to boost up to 71 degrees. Yeah, a lot of chemtrailing goes on here. We got a lot of planes spraying stuff. Oh, yesterday the skies were incredible. Just the patterns and designs they were doing in the sky. And, you know, I was going to take pictures and say, look what I've done it before. And if people ain't woken up by now, I don't think they ever will, but it is what it is. So Courtney will join us here shortly. Astronomers discover a mysterious object in the Milky Way. A new and unknown object in the Milky Way that is heavier than the heaviest neutron stars known to scientists and yet lighter than the lightest known black holes has been discovered by astronomers. Researchers from a number of institutions, including the University of Manchester and the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Germany, found the object in orbit around a millisecond pulsar 40,000 light years away in a dense group of stars known as a globular cluster. Millisecond pulsars are a type of pulsar neutron star with pulses of radiation that spin very rapidly, hundreds of times per second. Either possibility for the nature of the companion is exciting. I guess the conspiracy theories could get rolling around now. I don't think it's Planet X. New species of bacteria discovered in unusual human infection. Researchers at King's and Guy's in St. Thomas have discovered a new species of bacteria now called Variovorax durovorinesis, and it's living within a patient at St. Thomas's Hospital. After the patient, who works as a shepherd in Canterbury, was admitted with a fever, a standard blood test discovered two different species of bacteria as the source of the infection. However, one of the species could not be identified with conventional laboratory testing. So, to characterize the species, the researchers used a nanospore sequencer. And this technology can read long single sequences of DNA much faster than other techniques, allowing for quicker analysis of its whole genome. Anyways, the results published in Clinical Infection in Practice showed that it was a new species of bacteria, a group of bacteria that lives in the soil. Analysts of maybe the bacteria are growing in the soil from all the stuff that went up and is now coming down. That's just my thought. Analysts of the bacteria its chemistry and genome confirmed it as a new species never before described by the scientific community. So look out for new bacteria that antibiotics aren't even going to look at. So Donald Trump has won already, right? The Trump juggernaut is unstoppable, it says. He won Iowa with over half the vote and a helpful second place to Ron DeSantis with over half the vote. And Ron DeSantis came in, right? He came in second place, I think. And then there was Nikki Haley, who still thinks she's got a chance. I don't know why. I guess that's what the establishment's pushing. So they say, let's see, New Hampshire on Tuesday will be less of a battle of campaigns than the pollsters. They say American Research Group shows Trump and Nikki Haley neck to neck. I don't see them neck to neck. In any case, she's going to get embarrassed in South Carolina because, I don't know why she thinks she's so loved in this state, but you'll see. You'll see. I don't have to say nothing. Just watch. You'll see. They say that right now Donald has a 16-point lead. That is in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire's a little different of a beast, It might pull a little closer in New Hampshire, but the rest of them, he's going to wipe her out. Anyways, so that's about all I got for tonight. News-wise, that is. I have a guest coming up here in just a minute, so no, it's not over yet. So I want you to just hang out with me for a few minutes, and then I will be back with my wonderful guest. So this is The Last Frequency. I am Mike Vara, and I have to pause you over there on the video.
talk station.
Hey, frequencies of all walks of life. Keep up with all things TLF Radio by joining our mailing list. Go to the bottom of the homepage and fill in the form. You'll get everything from guest info and show info and other important station-related information. So sign up now.
You're listening to the VARA Network.
Frequencies around the world. Listen up. The shop is here, and you can order TLF radio swag right now and show your friends and neighbors you're awake by wearing one of our many shirts. We have coffee mugs, clocks, so never miss your favorite shows, books, mouse pads. Just go to thelastfrequency.com and click the shop link. That's thelastfrequency.com and get to shopping.
Crazy ass bumper stickers and more.
What?
You heard me. Crazy ass bumper stickers and more.
What?
Crazy ass bumper stickers and more.
What?
For all your bumper sticker needs, just click on the Crazy Ass Bumper Stickers banner located at the foot of my website, www.lastfrequency.com. That's Crazy Ass Bumper Stickers and more.
You're making me crazy.
Hey, Walmart shoppers, how about you spend your money in a useful manner? Try a Last Frequency subscription.
I love this damn show because he's not going to take it anymore. So turn off the other crap and pull up a darn seat, will you?
Tune in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for 2 hours of mind-blowing radio and TV. The Last Frequency covers everything.
You're listening to the wonderful Vara Network.
This is
The Last Frequency.
You are.
Do you have a thirst for knowledge and a curiosity for the unknown? If you answered yes, then you need to tune into The Last Frequency radio show with veteran talk radio host Mike Vara. The Last Frequency is a talk radio show that covers everything from UFOs, paranormal, Bigfoot, forbidden archaeology, government cover-ups, and much more. The Last Frequency is live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern on lastfrequency.com. You can also watch the show on Rumble, but if you want to get the full experience and access a much wider archive of past shows, you need to become a subscriber. As a subscriber, you will be part of the resistance and support independent media. Don't miss this opportunity to join the Last Frequency community and get informed, enlightened, and entertained. Subscribe today and get ready for the ride of your life. Because when all communications go down, this just may be your last frequency.
From the great Southeast, in the capital city, Columbia, South Carolina, you're listening to The Last Frequency with your host, Mike Vara. To get questions to Mike, just go to the portal page on the website or give a call at 803-369-3629. Now, here is Mike Vara.
Okay, you're back with me over there on YouTube. Sorry, I have to mute you on the music end of things, or get all these emails and threats and all that good stuff. So, all right, so website, just go to MikeVara.com. Cece likes me to use the Vara Radio Network.com. And I like it too, but it's long again, and I'm just trying to shorten things up for you. MikeVara.com. I mean, it's just simple and easy and fast, and it is what it is. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my guest while I have a chance to do so, and that is if I could figure out what monitor I'm on here. I don't know. There's part of me that wants to kind of reset things up. I just don't know. Don't know if I'm satisfied yet with. I don't know what I want to do here. I might have to switch a few things around. But so yeah, Courtney Mickenville joins me here in a moment. She is the founder of Seaside Shadows, based out of Mystic, Connecticut, and offering walking tours and boat tours throughout the southern New England region. She is a licensed tour guide, published author, and actual descendant of accused witches. Courtney is a Connecticut native and spent 5 years in D.C. after completing her studies at Catholic University of America and the University College Dublin, where she studied abroad, majoring in international relations. After earning her degree, she worked for the FBI as an analyst, having been influenced by her time interning at NCIS for the Cold Case Homicide Unit. Oh, wow. Following her internship, Courtney spent 2 years in Vermont working for Department of Homeland Security and honing her investigation skills. Boy, she's done it all, hasn't she? Courtney has frequently had fascination with the unexplained and supernatural legends. In Courtney's childhood home in the central Connecticut town of East Hampton, numerous paranormal occurrences happened. The events were so extreme that the Warren family came to investigate and exorcise the house during her teenage years there. Intrigued by her childhood home and raised by a teacher and a history major, she has always taken an interest in the unknown and has now put her sensitivities, investigative skills, love of history, and writing aspirations to work. So with that, our website is www.CourtneyMcInvale, that is McInvale, CourtneyMcInvale.com. Books, Civil War Ghosts of Georgia, Civil War Ghost of Connecticut. And so let's go ahead and get Courtney on with us, and we will get this haunted show going. Let's see here. There we go. And we're ringing. Good evening, Courtney. This is Mike Vara with Last Frequency. How are you? Hello, hello. Hello, Courtney. I hear you. I can hear something in the background. But I don't hear you. Hello, Courtney. I'll look at my settings, but I know it's not me. No, let's look. Audio. Yeah, I'm good. Oh, that's a hang up. All right, so let's see what happens. Maybe she's gonna call me back here. Maybe it's the ghosts. They're at it. Skype's been haunted for a long time. I mean, I got a number through them and stuff, so, you know, I use it often. I don't know. Once in a while we have these issues. I haven't not been too often lately. I guess maybe I should call her back. She's probably trying to figure out if it's her sound. I'm going to go ahead and try again. I probably should pull up my email too, just in case. Oh, good. Well, we don't want that to go through. All right, no, I'm not going to do that either. All right, so no, nothing so far. Let me try to call her back. Maybe one of those nights, folks. It's a Friday night. Oh, and there it goes, that annoying sounds that it makes. Good evening, Courtney. Are you with me? Hello, hello. Hello, Courtney. That's not good. No, that's not good at all. Well, I got to figure out what to do here. It's not on my end. I mean, you heard that, right? Bloomp. I mean, everything's working on my end. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have heard the bloomp. You wouldn't have heard none of that. So, let's see. Let's see. All right. I could try that. Oh, God. All right, hold on a second, folks. I'm working on it. I got to send something over to the other computer for this to work. Let's see. This is supposed to happen on a Monday night, not on a Friday night. All right, let's go. There it is. Send away. Let me go. Oh, boy. Huh. She says it wouldn't let her. Oh, okay, it wouldn't let her answer the call on the phone number. So I'm going to try it a different way here. Hold on a second. Bear with me, folks. We're going to get this. Yeah. Live radio, no producers, just me. This is what happens. No, what am I doing? Don't do that. That's not what I'm supposed to do. Where is it? Didn't even come through. Oh, there. Is that it? Yeah, that is it. All right. Let's click that and see what happens. Yes, join on the web. Skype is open. Will you just do it? My God. All right. I think we're going to get this. All righty. Let me close all that, and I think I've got her. Let's see. Oh, that's right, because it was going to be video. Good evening, Courtney. How are you tonight? Hello. Can you not hear me? Hello, Courtney. I see her, but she's not hearing me. Let's see. Boom. No? Yes, you're in here somewhere. What is this thing doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I can hear you.
There
Yay.
you are. Welcome to The Last Frequency. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fine.
Awesome.
Thank you. We are live. I'm just trying to get the video up for everybody, and
sure.
It is not cooperating. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Mine was being uncooperative as well. I always blame the ghosts when that happens, though. It can't be me, right?
Yeah, right. That's nuts. Why is it doing that? I've got it on Skype. It doesn't want to pick it up for some reason.
Yeah, I see me in the corner, and then I see your logo in the middle.
Yeah,
That's what I
so my video feed right now is being used by a program I'm using to broadcast us on YouTube and other places.
Oh,
And
okay.
so you won't see me, but
Okay.
I see you and I see me, and I'm trying to put you on my screen here so everyone else
Sure.
can see. And so I'll keep working on it. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. It's good to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me and inviting me to be on your show.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's many other things you could be doing on a Friday night besides sitting here talking ghosts with me, but I appreciate it.
Now, there's nothing I'd rather be doing than talk about ghosts. Don't worry.
All right, great. So I guess a good place to start would be a little bit of your background, a little history as how you got rolling into all this.
Oh my gosh, sure. So it's a long story, and I'm verbose, so I'll try to keep it as brief as I can.
Okay.
But I grew up in Connecticut, and I grew up in a house that was pretty old, and it had a lot of sort of unexplained activity. I was also raised by two very intelligent parents. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a police officer and a history major. And so they made sure I was learning history at a young age. And my dad was always reading me books about the Civil War because he was from Georgia, and it's definitely rooted there. So I grew up with a love for history in a sort of haunted house. As I got older, the activity in the house went from what I used to say was like benign haunting activity that happens in old New England houses, creaky floorboards, doorknobs that turn, flickering lights, to more malevolent sort of activity. And we would see blood on the walls and shadow figures and things of that nature. So when I was a teenager and this was all happening, my parents were going through a separation and there were things going on in the family. And my mom decided to call in some folks to see if they could help. And she called priests and pastors. And after they were sort of unable to do anything about our haunted activity, someone told her about a couple named Ed and Lorraine Warren, who also lived in Connecticut, who were Catholic like we were, and who specialized in this sort of thing. So it was when I was a teenager that she gave them a call to have them investigate the house. Now, Ed was sick at that time, so Lorraine really took the reins on that and came to the house and did a cleansing and thought we were living in a portal to the other side, and kind of forewarned us that we would always be attuned to paranormal events thereafter. But living in a small town and being a teenager, I was embarrassed by the whole ordeal and didn't talk about it for 10 years or want anyone to know what had happened. But I continued to experience things, as Lorraine said. I fell in love with history, and I found a comfort in history that helped me to understand the other side as really just stories of people still needing to be told and be honored. So I was working for the government when I had this revelation after college, and I quit working for the government, and I started a haunted history tour company and started doing haunted history books.
Awesome. And so these tours, anything ever interesting ever happen on the tours?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I've just become so used to them. So I've been doing the tours for 10 years, and I go to haunted places for my books all the time. So for me, it's sort of second nature to see shadows, hear sounds, hear voices, get anomalies on camera, which are all really common on the tours. And usually what we do if an event happens, multiple times, we have one location where different streetlights will flicker at different parts in the story, and it's always at important parts in the story. So now that's become a part of the story, that the ghost is sort of working with the lights. So things happen on the tours like that often.
Oh, cool. And so tell me a little bit about maybe one of the more interesting happenings that you've witnessed yourself.
Oh my gosh. So, interesting happenings for me, I don't know that I have any that were as scary as when I was growing up. And that's probably the one I least like talking about because most of my experiences are more profound. But I think a lot of the experiences were it has been really memorable for me, and obviously explains why I'm writing Civil War ghost books, have been on battlefields in Georgia and Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia. But I think for me, a lot of them happen in Gettysburg. It's not necessarily that Gettysburg is more haunted than the others. It might be that I'm closer to it. But when I'm there, I've had incidents where I have seen items move. I've seen figures, heard voices, captured, sounds of cannons and drumming on camera. And I just seem to have these experiences that really stand out, that are sort of top tier for those of us who are in the haunted fields.
Well, I've still not had success in getting your video feed up. Sometimes this program does that to me, and it'll eventually.
Sorry, well, it's just me and Ulysses S. Grant behind me. One the portrait, not the ghost, though I suppose he could be here too.
Yeah, you never know.
Never know.
So you've got 2 books out, correct?
I actually have four books out.
Oh, okay.
5 now. So I wrote Haunted Mystic, which is about the town where I started our tour company in Mystic, Connecticut in 2014. And then I wrote Revolutionary War Ghosts of Connecticut a couple years later, where I sort of started researching the American Revolution, our war for independence from England, of course, and staying in places frequented by George Washington, Benedict Arnold, things like that, Aaron Burr. And then I went forward from that point, and I really wanted to do the Civil War. And so I started working with Mike Rixicker at Haunted Road Media, and he said, you know what, go for it. And I wrote Civil War Ghosts of Connecticut, which was about soldiers from Connecticut in the war. And then I wrote Civil War Ghosts of Georgia, which Volume 1 came out in October, and Volume 2 just came out 3 days ago. So technically it's now 5, which is really exciting.
And what are some of the more active locations? I imagine battlefields, correct? When it comes to the Revolutionary and the Civil War.
Yeah. Battlefields are definitely some of my hot spots. Gettysburg, Antietam, Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg, Chickamauga, places where you see tens of thousands of casualties. That energy is never really going to leave a place. So that's always going to be active. But you also have at or near these sites a lot of museums and historic homes that also tend to have a lot of the energy as well.
What do you, some people think that there's like these energy imprints into time, stuck in time, and that's what people are seeing. Others think that they're actual spirits. What's your take?
It's so debatable. And I've had the same thought processes as I'm investigating these haunted locations. So, I go back and forth, and the best way to sort of differentiate them is active hauntings and residual hauntings. If you're looking for an active spirit, you're looking for someone who is communicating with you, right? If you're a paranormal investigator and you're like, hi, my name's Courtney, is anyone here? You're hoping you get an EVP or that says, my name is so-and-so, or you get a knocking sound or a response or something where they know that you're there and you're not, dead, and they know that they're there and they are dead. But most of the time, in my experience, that's not the case at these battlefields and things. And that doesn't mean that they're not haunted by spirits, but I believe it could be 2 things. I believe that it's the energy that resides there that never truly left. And I believe that we also might be encountering what's more like a time slip, where because of the profound energies that take place here with all this loss of life or, a huge act of violence, that when that happens, it almost opens up like a time portal, as it were. And I think that we have this ability to sort of almost step back in time and hear sounds and experiences from then.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there are instances where people have run in with ghosts, spirits, call them what you will. and they get informations told to them, And,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that, so some of these things, I mean, they're happening in real time. And that tells me, and I've had experiences myself, even though, you get it's kind of, I compare it to like crack. You get a little bit, you want more,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And then you almost forget to embrace what you're going through, because you're just like, wait, I have to have this again. But you can't necessarily repeat that exact experience. The only time I got lucky with doing not that they listened to my command, because I figured out later that they didn't. But I walked onto the wheat field at Gettysburg, and a storm was rolling in. It was near sunset, and so I had limited time to really be out there, but I wanted to see what was going on. And when I walked onto the wheat field, I heard talking and I heard drumming, and I thought, oh my gosh, maybe some reenactors were just doing a living history thing, and they just sort of, are scampering off before the rain. But as I walked out there was no one there, not a hint of anyone, not a car driving off, absolutely not another living soul. And I got so mad at myself that I sort of threw that away as, dismissed it when it could have been, spiritual. So I'm walking around as it's starting to rain going, please play the drums again, please, play the drums. And nothing's happening, but I thought, I'm not going to be fooled this time. I'm keeping my phone recorder on, and we're going to see what happens. And I did. And as we were walking around, it was myself, my husband, and a friend of mine. All of a sudden, the drumming started again, and I captured it. And so I then looked at the times that they were engaged in battle on the wheat field, and I listened to the march that I had recorded and compared it with the one that I had heard before. And those times that the drums played were the times that the engagement at the wheat field was. And it was the intro into March, and then it was, the final march or the death march at the end. So it wasn't me asking for it again. It was it matching the times of that battle as if it was replaying. So that was interesting too.
That's very interesting. I lived in an apartment that had activity. And at first I'm one of those people who I tried to just, debunk all of it. It's like, I had to be this, I had to be that. And then there comes a point where you just can't deny what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. And, it starts out with little things, cabinet doors, lights kind of doing weird things. And, it's easy to just brush that stuff off. And and little things like, you closed your closet door before you went to bed, but every morning you wake up, it's open again, and there's no one else there. It's just, so, little things like that start kind of tipping you off. But
yes. And I live in an old house now, and I laugh at the door thing because it's happening here. We live in a house, my husband and I, that was built partially in 1675 and partially in 1790. And I didn't want to live in it just because it needed a lot of work, not because it was old and haunted, which I knew it was. And that's, of course, the selling point when you're a ghost person like me. But we had this bedroom upstairs that always seemed to be, I guess had more energy than the other rooms in this house. And it was our bedroom. So I was like, whatever, it's fine. But my nephew, as a baby, wouldn't sleep in there, and he's with me a lot. So I was kind of, I didn't like that he didn't like the room. And then my dog started not liking the room. And I thought, oh, fine, this is the ghost's room now. This is where they live. And so we don't use that room. It's a few storage things. We just shut the door, but that door will open itself almost every day. And my husband will say to me, what were you doing in there? And I say nothing. That's the ghost room. That's not my room. I don't go in there. But they open that door and let us know that they're still part of the house.
I was going to say, something tells me they don't stay in the room. If they're opening the door, they're probably coming out,
They're probably like, she's shutting me in here. Who does she think she is, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, that's awful nice of you, though, to give the ghosts their own room. Most people would say, getting the Ghostbusters here and you guys are leaving.
You know what? They pretty much decided it was theirs. And I thought, you know what? Fine, have it. I'm not going to fight you. It's just my husband and I. We don't need it. Have it.
So, is it true that is there activity in graveyards? Have you, I've had folks who have, wrote books about it and, come on, talk to me about these. And one of my things is just when I'm dead, I hope that I'm not hanging around the graveyard. I hope
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and we give graveyard tours, and I think a lot there's this. I don't know if it's a misconception, but it's a thought process that graveyards are more haunted because that's where the dead people are buried.
Yeah.
A lot of this thought process started coming about during the Victorian era, and the reason that happened then was in the Victorian era, people are dying of disease. They're dying in the Civil War. They're dying in huge numbers, and Queen Victoria started the act of mourning, so she started extravagant practices saying, "Remember your dead," right? And people didn't fear death at that point. They feared being forgotten. So we ensured all these practices of extravagant funerals, burials, walking in cemeteries, building cemeteries as parks, picnicking in cemeteries, this idea of keeping the dead with us. And it kind of got romanticized during that time period. And in a way, I think it's still in us to believe that. Graveyards, I don't think, are haunted in and of themselves. I think when we go seeking the people in the graveyard, our loved ones or someone from the past, they know that and they meet us at that place, right? I never believe if I'm bringing flowers to my grandparents that they've been standing around, all year thinking, goodness, I'm so glad Courtney came on my birthday to bring me flowers, right?
Yeah.
I've been waiting the other 364 days of my afterlife this year for her. No, I don't think that. I think, they know that I'm bringing them flowers, and I can sense that when I'm there, and they feel it when I'm there, but I don't think they're hanging around the whole time. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I think goofing around in the cemetery could draw attention too.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember years ago. I was much younger, much more not with it, I suppose. And a friend of mine and it was about 2 a.m, and we had a few drinks. We decided we'd go try to get an EVP in the cemetery. So we hopped the wall in New York, where I lived. There was these big walls in the cemetery. You had to hop. So we hopped over the wall, and we just happened to be in the children's section. So I actually laid down by one of the grave sites, on one of the grave sites, and I started talking and asking questions. I got this weary feeling. So, we were there for about 30 minutes and we left. I get home and I'm going through the tape, and right at the very end, I hear a little girl say, "Am I dead?" And it freaked me out. My every hair on my body was sticking up. And to this day, I think the thought that there could be a child out there that don't know they're dead, or was it a jokester, spirit? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've heard both things in sort of the paranormal world, and we can sort of see this in horror movies as well. Is there's nothing perhaps scarier than a dead child in a horror movie, but it's also there's nothing more tragic or more sad than the idea of a life cut short. And when I give cemetery tours and we get near children's graves, you'll notice that there's a lot of mementos placed on there because it pulls at people's heartstrings.
Yeah.
And I do believe, just like their sort of adult counterparts, that they're not necessarily always there. But I can see where a child might be more confused about what death is because they didn't get to grow up and figure that out and have that sort of passing, of a full life. And so there's a sadness there. And when I've gone to Antietam Battlefield, I had an experience. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of the soldiers were teenagers. And so they, in a way, are childlike. They're not fully grown, When you're a teenager, you think you're grown, but you're not, right? And in these areas where a lot of the younger soldiers were very frightened and were dying and were ill-equipped, a lot of the EVPs I get, again, seems to be residual, but them calling out for their mom, asking where their mom is. And that always breaks my heart, and sort of that youth coming through from the other side. You just need to take a moment and acknowledge that.
Yeah, nothing freaks me out more, and like you said, pulls on the heartstrings more than a child. I lost a grandson a few years back, and he was
I'm
only
sorry.
9 months old. And so my question arose. I mean, why? What would be the I have guests who say, everything happens for a reason, and there's a plan, and I'm thinking, why even bother coming on this planet? For if you're only going to be here for 9 months,
Right.
That's like
It's
going to
almost
Hawaii
scary.
and staying for 2 days,
Is that the plan was for you to maybe change the lives of the living here? Did you change the way their mindset was, how they love, how they value time, I suppose? But then that's a very giving life for a short life, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's always a reason, but I do believe that they never truly leave us and that they're still just as much a soul. So that we carry them with us and that we'll see them again. And I trust usually that the loved ones on the other side are the ones caring for them until we see them.
I believe that too. I told my daughter that when she lost her son, I said, maybe, there's a purpose for it. Maybe, I said the same thing. It was to bring the family closer together. And her reaction was, it's pretty sad if a child's got to die to bring adults together. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm just, she's still, a mother never gets over such a thing. And it's
oh, never. And, it really is true for humanity, though. It's like we wait for disasters and traumas and tragedy before we really see our fellow human with compassion. And that's something that we all need to be better at, I think.
Yeah, I was just watching, my son had some videos on about 2 hours before the show, and it was he was just going through some stuff, and it said animals who are electrocuted. And I'm like, why are you watching that? And it's like, well, it's sad, look. And so there was these chimpanzees, and the baby chimp touched the electric fence and got shocked. And boy, the family just come over, cuddling the little baby and baby him just like we would. It was kind of amazing to see, how close we are.
That empathy is right there. Yeah. So I'm a big baby about animals. I have this older cat right now. He's 16 and he's going through some health stuff. And the vet talked to me last night and said, she doesn't know if like the kidney stuff will pull through or not. And you would have thought, she just delivered the most devastating news, like anything for my animals, that's so hard. And sometimes I think as people, we're more compassionate to animals than we are to each other, because they
I am.
they are unconditional love. They don't care, about a difference of opinion. They just love us. And it's hard, and they're too good for us, I think.
Yeah, they are very forgiving and very understanding, and I love dogs. I love I've had my share of cats too, and I've had a couple who really I was attached to. Cats are a little different though, because some of them get their own mind, their own personality, and they'll, like my cat used to, he'd let me pet him, and then you'd get comfortable petting him, and all of a sudden he'd attack your hand, and it's like, why can't we just get along?
They probably think it's playing,
Yeah, but
they're just. I appreciate that about cats, that sense of independency. They're like, I don't need anybody. I choose you if I want.
Oh, my cat used to mess with me. He's with his mommy now, over living somewhere else. But I'd be sitting doing my show, and he'd be out in the hallway, and he'd be on the wall, and he'd have his claws on the wall, and he'd look at me as if to say, I'm going to claw the wall, and you can't do nothing about it because you're on the air. And he'd start going. I'd say, I'm going to take a break, and I'd go after him, and he'd run, and he'd hide, and he'd come right back when I sat down doing it again. I mean, so they know what they're doing. They're like little children.
When I sat down for this call, my husband just corralled, the dog and the cats out of the room. So I get it, because they'll just be like, "What do you mean we're not part of this?"
Oh, I said my dog. He used to be sitting down at my feet when I did the show, and the cat would be up here on the desk.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so sometimes I'd put him on camera, but I got to get another. I'm thinking about getting a little pug. I want a little
those
pug.
are cute.
Yeah, a little funny looking dog. That's what
Oh, there's no, it's cute.
hey, that's what I need, a good pug. So, so now you had experiences, I guess, with a historian. Your father was a historian. Is that what that was?
I was a history major at the University of Georgia. So he, felt passionately about history, and particularly Southern history, because he married, a Yankee from Connecticut, and we were raised in Connecticut, so he wanted to make sure that Southern culture was something that I was familiar with, that Southern heritage, Southern history. And so he would, read me this book called Southerners, and it would have all the Civil War generals from the South. And I had them memorized by age 5, like by facial recognition. Like, he made sure that I learned all of this. And he just loved Civil War history. And I think that I was always in me because of it being at a young age. And, he passed in 2010, but now when I go around to all these battlefields and I do these things, I'm just like, I hope you're watching and that you're so happy. Because
He's probably right there with you.
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I swear, like, I feel him, like, in the back seat or marching around, with us, like, so just investigating. And, I always tell him, like, this is you, and I dedicated the books to him and everything because he definitely set me forth on a history-driven path.
When I have listeners or people anybody who tells me that, oh, this happened and I think it was my father, and it's like, well, stop. If you think it was your father, then it probably was.
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking it's your father because your father wants you to know he's there. So, take it for what it is. So don't be so quick to pass up, we overlook these things so easy.
Yeah, I did a speaking engagement about one of my books this past October in his hometown of Macon, Georgia. And my aunt and uncle and, one of my cousins was there, from his side of the family, and lots of other wonderful people. And, it was a big event. It was so much fun. And then, just for a split second, I swore I saw him in the back of the audience, posing like he usually does with folded arms and sort of this proud smile. And it was just for a second. And I told my husband, I feel like I saw my dad back there. And he's like, I'm sure you did, don't, throw that away.
Well, right. I mean, they can't exactly sit next to us, put their hand on our lap and start, and have a conversation with us. But, they do give us little signs sometimes that they're there. And, if we choose to overlook those signs, it's got to be frustrating for them. It's like, well, I tried.
I came here to show you and you just dismissed it. And, I've met so many people like that where they're like, I've gotten all these signs, but how do I know that that's them? And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you want from them? To like hit you over the head,
Yeah, and it's like, well, people are going to think I'm crazy. Who cares what anyone else thinks? This is for you. It's about you. It's not about
that. It's about what you believe and what you feel and what you know in that moment.
That's exactly right. When somebody tells me they're connecting with a spirit, I mean, who am I to say they're not? I mean,
right. I guess we can only say, like, I think occasionally, and it's usually so transparent, there's people who are always like, the folks who are always like, I only connect with famous people. I'm like, how can that be that only famous people talk to you and normal spirits don't talk to you? Like, those are the ones I question because that seems more like a money or publicity grab. But outside that, like, why not,
Well, my dad, before he passed, he had said, my mom had came to me when she died, and this was like 22 years ago, and she came to me, and she had a message, and it was, and it was really strange. It was kind of an out-of-body experience type thing. Well, anyways, I told my dad about it because she wanted me to tell him, it's not your time, and, live on. Well, she was right. He lasted 22 more years. And and so his thing was, he says, well, why does she come to you? How come she doesn't come to me? I says, you got to be open for it. He says, well, I am open. I mean, I'd love for her to come. It's like, maybe it's because, it seems to me like there has to be a serious reason why they show up. maybe, I mean, when they really show up, like to give you a message or something. I think for me, I mean, I was at rock bottom there for a little while, and I think that's what, Mom came for her boy. But and then my dad recently in April, he was on his deathbed. And he was telling us about, for the last 2 months, while he was in this rehab and all this stuff, he had a spirit that was visiting him in the middle of the night. And the spirit would take him for tours through the hallways out of his body. And, my dad, he's a very serious man. He was not one to, I mean, just getting to talk about that stuff was, like pulling teeth. So for him to come out and say that, and it was like, well, who was this person? He never could say who it was, just that he had somebody visiting him in the middle of the night. And he says when he was out of his body, he felt great, like no pain. He felt like he was young again.
Wow. Wow, that's so interesting.
And I thought, well, maybe it's my mom. I mean, he doesn't know who it is. Maybe he's not supposed to know.
It could be, anyone. It could be an ancestor from the other side.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I almost think there's like a committee, of our loved ones on the other side and ancestors that we didn't even meet. And when one of us is getting ready to pass, one of them is sort of like, the point person, the communicator who goes and gets us ready and then, brings us to the family. I think that, they maybe change it up, or whoever they think will be received best, or whatever the case is, and then they bring us, usher us through. But someone comes and maybe kind of helps out.
I think when it's my time, I think they're going to draw straws on who's coming.
I'm curious, if I'm, cognizant enough to even notice, like, oh, you've come to get me, haven't you?
So he's going to ask too many questions, or I don't want to go, Or he's going to complain about something. It's like my first thing will be, where's the comment box?
Well, we were talking about animals. What will make me not sweat going if they come first, then I'm in, the ones that I love, animals I love come first, no problem.
Yeah, that would be good. That'd be good. I could think of a few people I wouldn't mind coming to meet me. I could think of a few people I'd rather they didn't, too. But,
I know. Do you see them? You're like, no, please. I'm hanging in until you send someone else.
I'm told that all, bygones are bygones once you go to the other side. But I don't know about that. I don't know.
It's funny. I have met people, because I've done, medium and tarot work, too, who have said, like, when they're meeting with me, if my ex-husband or whatever comes through and tries to apologize, I'm not talking to them. And I'm always like, usually on the other side, they don't hold that bitterness. But here, we absolutely can hold on to it. So it's interesting. But I've also felt like spirits on the other side, they take time to be all, all love and light and no earthly tensions. So.
Yeah, I believe it's a process, because when it comes to rotten, like you hear about bad stories people have with entities that they were, ghosts or demons, they'll call some of them, right? And I think I've had, it kind of makes sense to me if you're a rotten, here, when you get over there, you're probably the same way for a little while. I don't know.
Yeah, the miracle's not instantaneous. The angels or entities of light, or whatever you want to call them, the good beings, they have to do work with your soul, before, you're changed. And I do think that change is possible, but it's not instant.
Yeah, me too. And I think maybe some just stay the way they are. I mean, I don't, it's such a mystery, because when you factor in all the God factor and all that, and you would think, you go to the other side and you start acting up over there, I would imagine there's got to be some kind of consequence. Like, Father's not going to put up with that. But apparently you got free will there too, I guess.
I know. That'd be kind of interesting. Like, what can you get away with there?
My thing, and I say this all the time, I'm like a broken record, but my biggest fear is it's boring. And I don't want I don't want to get over there and say, okay, Mr. Vara, get in line, get your harp, sign for it right here. Sit on that cloud and play for 100,000 years,
I remember when I was younger, and it wasn't, Catholics didn't really present this, but I forget which denomination of Christianity did, and my apologies to anyone listening, but who's part of this denomination, but they kind of told me, our goal is to like get to heaven where we can worship Jesus all the time and sing songs and, live in like basically these church-like buildings. I don't know. They painted this very like church was heaven, and I was like young and I was thinking it better not be. That sounds like dreary for eternity.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed in that imagery. Like, I'm going to need more than that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be good if I could still go to the Bills games and if we can stick around for a little while. I know a few people I wouldn't mind messing with before I go on. As I'm not going to get checks next to my name.
I always tell people, I love concerts when I'm not doing ghost stuff. I'm a music person through and through. And they always say when musicians pass, they're playing the great gig in the sky. And I'm like, now that I could do for an afterlife. I could go to that.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing is we're all going to get there. And yeah, and it's one of the things that I think it's one of the biggest questions we have. I mean, there was two, right? Are we alone, and where do we go when we die? I think those are two of the biggest. I think it's been pretty much done that we're not alone. There's been a lot of talk about these UFOs and all this stuff, right? But where are we going when we die? It would be, 'cause you get on your deathbed. I guess the scary part is not that you're going to die, but how you're going to die. And then it's what's going to happen when I do. I think funerals, I've said this before. I think that I think we've gotten past standing there morping over a dead body. Because, that's what you think of when you leave. You think, I mean, who leaves a funeral and don't, spend the day, off and on thinking about that, like your own mortality.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's like a lot of the fear comes in with not knowing. I think that's just what makes us human, is a fear of the unknown. That's always like when you're walking, why you're afraid of the dark, why if you're at a haunted place and you're supposed to touch something that's spooky, it's more that you're afraid to touch something than the actual sensation is spooky. It's what you can't see, what you can't know. And I think that that's what's in all of us. And they say it's better to have faith and not know, but it is fear-inducing in a lot of ways. I think, with funerals, we think about our own mortality. We wonder if there's a way to confirm that they still hear us, and I find myself, even though I'm in this field and I have gotten evidence and I've had experiences and I've had, my own beliefs, I still find myself questioning it all the time, but how do I know, right?
Me too. I don't care how many experiences I have. In the back of my mind, I still say, because how do I know what that really was? I mean, I think I do, but I can't be, for sure. And, just with funerals, they say, remember the good times you had. Well, once you see that person in that casket, you might remember the good times, but that always flashes through. You always see that too. And I just feel like nowadays we could just put videos, put big TVs on the wall and play videos. And I think that'd be, let's celebrate the life rather than everyone comes in, they're real quiet and you're still whispering and sadness everywhere. Nobody's really celebrating. Everybody's depressed and or some can't wait to get out of there. They're just there because they had to be, or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I remember, at my dad's funeral, I didn't see his body. He was cremated before I got there. He had been back living in Georgia for a bit, and I hadn't seen him in a time. There were tensions, before he died, and we had just started talking again, but I hadn't seen him. And I was talking with some of my family, and I said, you know what? I don't want you to tell me what he looked like or anything like that from those last, time, because I want to remember what I remember, growing up with him and how I see him. And I feel like if I knew or saw something different, it would change that, and I don't want it to be changed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I think there was a time when death was celebrated big, and now it's not like it's not celebrated, but it's not celebrated happily. I
Well,
mean, I don't want
yeah,
people.
it's mourning, right? I
Yeah,
There's this old Wes Anderson movie. I guess it's old now, so I'm dating myself, but it was called like The Darjeeling Limited. And it was basically about these, three American guys, and they end up in India for whatever reason on this train. And it's kind of a comedy, but they find themselves also a part of an Indian funeral. And they kind of, they're all dressed dark in mourning, right? But they know that everyone there is wearing white, and they're bringing color, and they're bringing light, and they're celebrating this life, and they start to wear white. And it's kind of, just one of those movie memories that sticks with me of like, how are we viewing life in death? Why are we putting the somber mentality on it? Not all cultures necessarily do that. So it's interesting how it differs even around the world.
it really does, and death is again, it's something a lot of people don't like to think about. Me, I think about it a lot. To be honest with you, I mean, and not that I sit here dwelling on it, or I just, I think about it a lot. I look in the mirror sometimes, say, well, you're getting older. It's gonna happen one of these days. I mean,
Yeah.
and when your own parents pass away, it really shows you really feel your mortality. It's like, well, if it's good enough for mom and dad, I guess it's good enough for me too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think we all do think about it and are always on a search for answers, and especially in the field of work that, we're in, or curiosity or anything to do with the paranormal. You talk about death so much, it's hard not to think about your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Courtney, hang on with me for a moment. I want to take
Sure.
a break, and
Sure.
then we will come back and we'll talk some more. Folks, if you're finding this interesting, stick around. There's more to come. And if you want to help us out, you can go over to the website and do that. You can help yourself out too. Sign up for the newsletter. Become a member on the website. That's free. If you want to subscribe or donate, that always helps, and I appreciate that. And so, over on the video end of things, again, I've got to mute you for the music. Sorry, that's the rules, and we'll be back. I will tell you this. The website's lastfrequency.com. Go on over, become a late nighter, be informed, and by all means, inform others. Always inform others. Hello, everybody on YouTube and everywhere else. I think we're on X. We are on, we're on a bunch of them. Facebook and Twitch, and I don't know. I can't remember them all, but we're there. And we're here. And so, Courtney, we are back. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight. I do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm having fun talking with you.
Yeah, it's a very good conversation. I'm enjoying it myself. So, all right. So, I guess you had experience. You've been with the FBI, Homeland Security. Is that right? You help solve cases. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I think in college, I had this really great internship opportunity with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service because I went to school in Washington, D.C. at Catholic University, and the Washington Navy Yard is there, and people will be familiar with Naval Criminal Investigative Service as NCIS because there was a big show on CBS for years about it. Maybe it still exists. I don't know. But it was a really cool internship opportunity with the real one, not the TV one. And I started off just sort of doing an administrative internship, and then I got to work in cold case homicide. And that was really fantastic. And I really felt like I sort of found something that I enjoyed. I was putting puzzle pieces together, trying to find information that other people hadn't found before. It was really special, and I was able to get a cold case reopened, and so that was really exciting. But I graduated in the Great Recession, as they call it, in 2008, and so there were limited job opportunities at that point, and NCIS was limited in their actual hiring at that time. So they suggested that, I look into the other agencies, and FBI had a hiring blitz going on. So I, applied for them, and I met their criteria, and then I was hired as an intelligence analyst for counterterrorism. And I did that. I attended the FBI Academy, graduated from there, and started my position with the FBI. It was not all that I dreamed it to be, I suppose. I'm not a good office girl and a paper person, and I'm not good at chains of command. Like, if I want to do something, I just want to do it. I don't want to go through a bunch of people. I don't want to sit around and just mark papers. I don't know. It wasn't for me. And I thought I could make more money and maybe be a bit happier, a little closer to home. And so I took an opportunity with immigration services at Homeland Security in Vermont, where my sister was living at the time. And so while I loved Vermont, really, really fun place to be, more rural and woodsy than Washington, D.C., I still did not like working in an office for the government, apparently. And so in 2013, I came back to Connecticut and started Ghost Tours, which isn't as random as it sounds. As you know, I have a background with loving those things. But when I was living in Vermont, I met a woman who wrote haunted history books and had her own tour company, Thea Lewis. And I thought she was fascinating. I took her ghost tour and I picked her brain about how she got started. And I thought, I can do this too. This is the dream. And then that's what happened.
And have you ever helped? You're NCIS as well. That in the FBI, Homeland Security. Well, you really got around, huh?
The grass is always greener, right? And then you realize they're all one big monster. But I do think that, no pun intended, but I do think that my favorite placement was between Homeland Security and counterterrorism and cold case homicide was definitely cold case homicide. For me, it was about looking for clues and putting the puzzle pieces together and figuring out folks' stories, and in a way it's kind of resembles what I do now. I give tours and put together the stories of people. I put books and honor the stories of people. And in Cold Case, it was like, let's put an end to this person's story. So there seems to be something about me liking that part. So that's probably why that resonated with me.
I see. All right. And so I got a couple listener questions here. Let's see.
Sure.
What are some of the most haunted battlefields of the Civil War, and what kind of ghostly phenomena have been reported there? We were kind of just talking about that in the beginning,
Sure.
but
we can recap definitely a few. So, we'll go to my recent books, Georgia. There's several battlefields there. Chickamauga, Georgia, has been known to have sightings of blood running down the trees at the anniversary of the battle in September. People seeing glowing mounds on the earth that they describe as like the phosphorus from the bones that were decomposing there. People still hear drums marching through there. They see figures coming out through the trees. There is a woman who is looking for someone she lost, and she keeps walking around the Wilder Tower. Then there's, of course, Gettysburg, which has the oldest recorded paranormal story in the Civil War with Iverson's pits. And there was a general from Georgia, Alfred Iverson, and he was kind of born with a silver spoon, and he was forced into the military by his father. His wife passed away, and he wasn't, the most well liked, but in sort of a drunken decision from the night before, he was drunk when he made this decision, he sent his men into what he thought was a good line in formation of day one at Gettysburg, and almost 900 of them died in a matter of minutes, were just mowed down by the Union. And they were from North Carolina, these guys, under a Georgia general, and he got moved out of that position afterwards. But the ghost story goes that where those Iverson's pits are, people see the soldiers stand up in formation just before sunset and get shot down in formation. The farmers who owned that land started seeing it within the months after the battle, and the stories at Gettysburg really expanded from there. People who were filming the movie Gettysburg had encounters with people they saw, handing them musket balls, bullets that were dated to the actual time, who vanished. There's supposedly someone by the Devil's Den who gives people directions. Then you have Antietam and the Bloody Lane, where people still smell blood and they hear crying, and they hear an Irish battle cry coming through, and they know that an Irish brigade was there. So really just the stories are so endless and fascinating at bringing us back into those harrowing years of 1861 to 1865.
All right, and so another question regarding Abraham Lincoln.
Sure.
Where has he been seen? White House, other locations? Any stories about old Abe?
Yes, so, my favorite ghost story about Abraham Lincoln is his. So he prophesied his death in his dreams. And he saw it he saw his funeral. So it was a couple weeks before he was actually shot dead that he had this dream that he was walking through the White House, and he went into the opposite wing, and he heard everybody crying, and he was like, what's happening? And it seemed like everyone was walking around him, but finally he went up to a guard, and he asked the guard, what's happened here? And he said, the president has died. He's been shot. And he saw himself in the casket. And then he woke up. And he said that dream continued a couple times. And, that's obviously what happened to him. And, that whole thing is filled with spiritual stories. It's like, it's crazy. Ulysses S. Grant was supposed to be at the theater with him, but his wife prophesied that he would be killed at the same time as Lincoln, and forced him not to go to the theater. So there's a lot going on there. As far as Lincoln's afterlife, he is the most popular ghost seen in the White House. But oddly enough, I had a tour guest come who used to live in a house that somehow housed the clothes that he was killed in, for some time after the event happened, the assassination, and she still had bloodstains in her closet, and said that like it still, like, the closet made sounds and it was really creepy. So I never forgot that tour guest.
Yeah, that is creepy. Wow.
Yeah.
What do you do with something like that? You have started having reoccurring dreams of your own funeral. That would, what do you do? Lock yourself in a room and hope that the building don't fall on you?
And know that he believed in that. This was the age of spiritualism, so he believed that there was a meaning to it. Abraham and Mary Todd, though they had a fraught relationship after the death of their son, they were famous spiritualists who had seances in the White House. So they very much believed in the afterlife and in messages. So for him, he was absolutely petrified about those dreams.
Yeah, I would be too, but maybe not going to the theater would be good. I don't know. At that time, at any time,
if it would happen at a theater, right? So he didn't know, and though Ulysses declined the invitation to the theater, he didn't say why. He said that he had to go see his family, at his wife's behest. So he didn't say, hey, my wife thinks we're going to get killed, right? Because he wasn't sure how do you say that to the president.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he knew that's where it would happen. And so it was like, even if he hid away, who's to say someone wouldn't come in and kill him? He wasn't really sure where it would be.
Boy, that's something. You know you're gonna die. You just don't know. And it's coming soon. Or you just blow off the dreams. But if they're reoccurring, I'm not blowing that off.
Yeah. And he's concerned because this is well documented. He's telling people in his life, I'm concerned about this dream, right? But it gave enough information to know he was shot and would die, but not when or where.
I'm going to guess they didn't have Secret Service back then.
Guards. He said there were guards, because remember in his dream, he talked to a guard, but I don't know how many people went everywhere with him, but I would have to relook at the situation, but I feel like there were even guards at the theater. But of course, you don't presume you're going to be shot by a performer, right? So they're looking in the other direction.
But the fact that it was a civil war, and that you got half the country ticked off at you.
Well, the war had just ended, right? So he thought he was maybe in a better place. The war had just concluded. Maybe things were going to be pieced back together. And Lincoln, he was a divisive figure from the get-go. He won barely the election, barely, and a lot of folks are like, oh, he came in anti-slavery. No, not really. He was kind of put in that position to take a stand. He wanted to compromise first with the Confederacy and allow them to keep slavery for a time. So a lot of the things that happened with Lincoln was his hand was forced, and he was just really put in the presidency at the worst possible time.
Yeah, and I, some of what I heard and understand is that, he wasn't all gung-ho about the whole slavery thing and ending it, that was basically used to get people behind it.
It was because he knew that he barely won, and if he did that, politically he's not an idiot, right? This is pushing away the people that already were questioning him. So it was probably a political motive to not. Personally, I'm sure he had his own feelings that were anti-slavery, but politically felt like that was not something he could push at that time until it was, thrust upon him as, an all or nothing type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, at that time, it was going on around the whole world, just about.
Yes. And, and this can get, bad really fast once we hit that slippery slope of talking about slavery.
Yeah, sure.
But, there's a lot of stories, too, of Union soldiers not being this pinnacle of we want freedom. Like, they didn't necessarily support that. That's not how they're getting Union soldiers to fight. Sherman, who's one of the most famous Union soldiers, who did help in the freedom of slaves, was perhaps one of the most racist of them all and one of them to have the least rights. So it's a very gray area when we're discussing what the men of the Civil War felt about slavery.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it was a different time. It was a much different time, and people thought differently about it. Of course, if you were a slave, you thought much differently about it.
Of course, and if you're enslaved, you're going to trust that the Union are the folks you're going for because they're fighting for your freedom. And how scared are you going to be when you start following the Union around and they start doing everything to get you off their back because they don't actually believe in that for you? They're just, fighting because they're being told, you're not their motivation. So how heartbreaking is that? And you're being cut off now with no resources on either side. Like, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we never have to deal with something like that again. But the world gets crazy at times, so you never know what's going to happen.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I think I love history, but history repeats itself, and that's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, but we'll probably get no warnings from the other side, I suppose.
Well, I think they do warn us. I think they're probably like, you fools, have we not shown you what has happened? And if there's anything humanity is guilty of, it's not paying attention to history, not learning it, not listening.
I 100% agree with you. And when you erase the history, it is repeated. And and unfortunately these days, there's a lot of fashions out there trying to erase the history. And I don't care if it's good or bad. We need to know it so we don't, or we can repeat it, whichever.
We need to talk about it. I mean, history of humans is going to be imperfect, and all these folks are going to be flawed, and none of them are going to be all good or all bad, but nor are we. So,
that's right.
But we can learn, and we can learn to be better from our forefathers and our foremothers, and that's always the goal.
Well said. Now, here's another one. How did the Civil War affect the lives of civilians and soldiers, and why do some of them linger as ghosts?
Sure. So we're looking at an enormous population for America that is affected by the Civil War. So America in the 1800s is much smaller than it is now. You have over 1 million Union soldiers, maybe nearly 2. And then you have almost 1 million Confederate soldiers. So we're talking almost 3 million guys are fighting. Then we're talking about a 640,000 casualty rate over 4 years. That is terrible statistics.
Yeah.
And that's just of the fighting folks. So there's not, when we talk about civilians and soldiers, there's not one family that's going to be unimpacted by the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. The Irish immigrants that are coming over, no matter which side they land, their boats land, they're going to be thrust in a battle because they're some of the easiest folks to get to go over. So even if you're newly arrived here and you don't even know what the fight is about, you're going to be part of the fight, right? There's no one that is left unscathed by this. And they are impacted because, as we discussed sort of before, they start having these lavish funerals. They start focusing on death. They start doing death masks. They start sending out death postcards. They start creating cemeteries as parks. They're starting to think death is just all around me, and this is all it is. The civilians during this time are having to decide, are they going to claim a side, and are they going to support a side? And if they support the wrong side, what's going to happen to them, which is also what happened during the Revolution. Their homes are being taken over as headquarters as they're storming through. Sherman burned down half of Georgia. These folks on both sides are going into civilians' homes, taking their things, taking their beds, taking heat from their children, food from the table of their children. Everyone's impacted by this, and it's no holds bar. As far as haunting, it kind of of goes without saying, all of this death, all of this fear, all of this separation, and all of this love lost is going to lead to hauntings all over America. And that's going to be on homesteads and where people are buried in unmarked graves where they died. And that's why we feel them so profusely, especially along the East Coast.
Yeah, and I was never fond of the way they fought in that Civil War. You know how they would just line up with guns and just start walking towards each other, shoot. It's like, what? If I was there, I'd have been like, what is wrong with you guys?
It's the last time we really did this, and the Revolutionary War, we did this, okay, which was, almost 100 years prior. A lot of the folks that fought in the Civil War, their grandfathers fought in the Revolution. And there's debate that happens if you read the letters and you're a nerd like me, of the generals and the officers who are in the Civil War. They do debate among one another these tactics. So a lot of the old school generals, because they all went to West Point and things like this, are saying, we're going to march. This is what we've taught. We've gone to military school. But some of the generals that are there, they're realizing that, especially the Union generals, that the Confederacy is using guerrilla warfare tactics. These are young men that are familiar with weapons. They're hiding in the woods. They have kind of, the equivalent of snipers. They are a little less organized. Because they don't have the money and the funding of the U.S. government. And they start off winning a lot of battles because they are operating not under those rules. And the Union debate continues because they start to figure this out. And do they continue with what they've been taught, or do they try to fight this new type of warfare? And so guerrilla warfare starts being used in the Civil War, but it remains debated by the generals throughout.
Well, if you were in them front rows, you were almost guaranteed to be dead. I mean, I would be speaking up. I'd say, hey, listen, no paint, no yellow line on my back, but this is suicide.
They did send out usually scouting parties before to see what those lines were, to go in the dark, to go on the side. They had spies. They had things that were happening to provide intelligence to generals like Lee and Grant and things like this on the movements of the enemy to help them make the best decision possible for when they're marching those lines forward. So it's not like it's, no intelligence being provided, but things could change really quickly. And of course, Pickett's charge at Gettysburg is famous for that, that flawed intelligence being provided to Lee and Lee's men just being hammered upon line by line. There's a writer named Ambrose Bierce who actually studies a similar event that happens at Pickett's Mill in Georgia. And he's a Union soldier, and then he goes on to write about it. And he would interview folks about, why do you think they were so willing to commit suicide? And, he never really got a concrete answer on that, because he felt that there was at a certain point when the men were marching forward that they would know it was suicide.
Well, yeah, it sure looks like suicide to me. I'd be, if it was me, if we're going to do it this way, I got to go to the back.
Yeah. Some of them could tell, other times they trusted their generals, they trusted their officers, they trusted the intelligence that was provided. You can see some great tacticians come to light in the Civil War on both sides. And I think, there's a respect among the officers on both sides of the Civil War because they have this ability to decipher what the enemy is doing. But sometimes you don't. Like, one of my favorite stories comes from the Battle of the Wilderness. And the Wilderness is called that because it's in the trees. They can't figure out where each other are. There's no field to open march. And Robert E. Lee is standing, in this sort of huddle with some of his guys. Some of these Union guys are looking for their folks, and they run into Robert E. Lee's camp. Robert E. Lee thinks that they're coming to attack him. They think that they've walked into like the hornet's nest, and they both run yelling from each other in the opposite direction. So, there are mistakes, there are confusion, but generally the line formations and the flanking maneuvers are what allow these tacticians to make smart decisions during the Civil War and to gain intelligence.
Yeah, it had to be, a horrible time. And again, like you said, all these teenagers who are fighting, and it just, and you can imagine sitting in your house and soldiers are just coming in, helping themselves to what they want. And just,
I know.
I
Yeah.
hope we never.
Because they don't have anything, right? They all thought the war was going to be over in a few months. Once it hits a year, they're like, oh, it's going to end. 3-4 years in, they don't have clothes. The Texans are marching without shoes. They are starving on both sides. It's terrible. And so they almost become, operating on instinct and whatever they can get from whoever they can get it.
It becomes survival at that point. Yeah. All right, here's another. I got a couple more here. What are some of the methods and tools that ghost hunters use to investigate Civil War ghosts, and what kind of evidence have they found?
Sure. So the best thing when you're looking for Civil War ghosts or you're operating on battlefields is not to get caught relic hunting. And that's the thing, is don't be digging around looking for objects or things of that nature. Try to operate with the things that you have available on your person, like a phone with a voice memos app or an EVP recorder. You can't even usually bring dowsing rods to these places unless it's not a national park, in which case, if you have permission, that might be useful for you. And I find that just using a voice memos and a camera is enough to capture images and to capture audio. Most of the stories that are recorded at Civil War sites come from visitors who just happen to be there at the right place, right time, and they come from reenactors who, oddly, as they are dressed as a soldier, sometimes have encounters with other folks they think are reenactors but are actually soldiers themselves.
Oh man, I'm get mad, Sarah. You are an imposter.
Yeah, I mean, I've read positive and negative stories about it. I read one where a group of reenactors had coffee with another group of guys that was across from their campsite. They had a great discussion. They were kind of in character. And, then the next day they went to go meet up with their friends and found out that there was no fire there. Their friends were not there. And there was no other reenactor camp. And they had actually sort of, communed with real soldiers. I've read sad tales of how a reenactor, from one side saw the opposing side in a bush, and he's like, come out here, with your hands up, you've been caught. And the guy starts crying and sweating and, starts running away in tatters of clothes and then vanishes. And he realized he actually scared, maybe the spirit of this real soldier. So, it can be tragic, but it can also be really fascinating.
All right, here's one more. She says, what are some of the legends and stories of Civil War ghosts that have been passed down through generations or popularized in books and movies? Anything you could think of?
Books and movies. So Civil War ghosts haven't been extremely popularized as ghosts. I mean, we talk about Gettysburg, we talk about, Antietam, but I'm trying to think of if we talk about them as ghosts. I know that the makers of the movies Gettysburg and Gods and Generals, which was originally part of the series The Killer Angels, and these movies came out in the 1990s. They specifically said that the ghosts of the Civil War wanted them to make this movie. And they did it for the ghosts, and they did it, based on the books. And they had so many paranormal experiences making those movies that they documented seeing and hearing things, and like I said, being handed bullets. And so for me, Gods and Generals and Gettysburg were also filmed at these locations. They were the only movies that were given permission to film at these national parks. Those are going to be the ones that perhaps have the most evidence and the most, experience in them.
Yeah.
They are dramatized 90s films with a really, dramatic score, but they are well acted, and they are worth watching. So for Hollywood, sort of, that's something I would look to. For ghost stories, the most popular legends that sort of get passed down are ones that have other elements to them. There is the Great Locomotive Chase. A lot of people believe that the ghosts associated with that are well known throughout Georgia, specifically in the Atlanta area at Oakland Cemetery. It was some Union guys. They stole a Confederate train. Confederates got the train back, and the Union men were executed as traitors, and they were hanged at Oakland Cemetery. And the Great Locomotive Chase did become a film. And so they do feature a bit of that, and people still swear they see them hanging from the trees in the cemetery. And it's really quite tragic and sad. And they also were the first folks that got the Congressional Medal of Honor. You have Gone with the Wind. Margaret Mitchell is buried in the very cemetery where those Union guys were hanged. They don't necessarily address the paranormal in there, but they address the Atlanta campaign and the stories that come from that, of young men seeing the ghosts of their friends walking around the battlefield, are quite profound. But I would say, the ones that are most well known would have to be Iverson's Pits. Those were some of the first most documented, and the Bloody Lane. So Iverson's Pits at Gettysburg and the Bloody Lane at Antietam are the earliest documented ghost stories.
Awesome. Well, Courtney, I want to give you the floor to get out anything else you'd like, websites, books, appearances, anything you want. And I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I've truly enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thanks for letting me be so verbose and, keep talking about Civil War ghosts. I could do that forever. So if you are interested in taking ghost tours in Connecticut or Rhode Island, you can check us out. We're called Seaside Shadows, and at seasideshadows.com we have our full schedule up for 2024 for those states. I am going to be launching tours in Georgia in 2024, so we'll be announcing that on our social media channels at Seaside Shadows. I also will be hosting a tour called Rebels of Ireland about Civil War in Ireland, the Easter Rising of the Easter Rising of 1916 in Ireland, in Dublin, and we'll be doing it on the anniversary, and that's going to be in 2025. And you can check that out at Secret Ireland Tours. And I also will be doing plenty of speaking engagements about Civil War ghosts of Georgia in 2024. And you can check out my website, CourtneyMcInvale.com, for info on the books or any upcoming engagements there.
All right. Well, Courtney, again, thank you so much. Enjoy what's left of your night, and have a good weekend. Have a good everything, and I hope we can do this again.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much again for having me.
Oh, you bet. You bet. We'll do this again sometime. I'll be in touch.
All right. That sounds awesome.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, there she goes. And Courtney's website linked up. Well, I think it's on it might be on my homepage, might not. The website's going through a little bit of transition, so it may not be on there. But it is www.CourtneyMcVale, McInvale.com. Her book, Civil War Ghosts of Georgia, Civil War Ghosts of Connecticut, and she's got a couple more, which I don't have listed here right now, but she mentioned them. You can go back in the recording or what have you and check it out. I really enjoyed talking with her. She's a lot of fun, and made for a really good Friday night. I want to thank each and every one of you, wherever it is you may be around the globe, in the chat room, on another planet, or on the other side. This has been a broadcast of The Last Frequency on the VARA network. Keep your eyes posted to the sky, because you never know what you might see. And keep your ears posted to this broadcast because you never know what you might learn. Good night, everybody.